welcome to our video where I'm going to show you how to put together our really useful crossbody bag. Now this is a pattern that is available either in a paper format or as a download from our website, and you can also get it in a kit to create using the wildflower fabric, either the navy or the claret, and the kits contain everything that you need for you to create your bag, including the zips, the lining fabrics, and as you can see it's a good sizable, very useful bag. So two different options there. You can of course download the pattern as well if you're wanting to, and make it up using your own fabric if you so choose. This is one that I've made up with our elephant boho fabric, and it is one that I use on a daily basis. Plenty of room for my mobile phone to go in that external pocket. And of course, again, plenty of room. I've popped a tassel on there just to give it a different look. I've got my big purse in there. There's plenty of room for other bits and pieces in there as well. So it's a very, very useful bag to make. Now, if you like the elephant fabric, we've got it in the blue. And this will show how you can actually use a feature on one side of the bag without necessarily putting the zip through the middle of this character. We've got the red as well. So two different options under the same fabric, and you'll find that again on our website. Now the pattern, when you get this, it's full colour, and you've got a nice image on the front there which is going to show you what you're aiming to achieve, and you've got full colour instructions throughout, taking you step by step, but this video is designed to help you create yours as well. Down at the bottom there you can see there's access to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date. Now of course you're going to get your paper pattern, and this is printed over several pages, including elements like the strap you can see here. Now the strap being a long piece, naturally we couldn't print that out, so you'll see that you've got an open end, and you'll just continue that to the measurements that are mentioned on your pattern there, and again that just depends on you. Now if you are downloading the pattern, just keep an eye on the square box that you can see on each of the pages, and that is a 2-inch square. So just in case your printer doesn't print off to full size, that is there ready for you to measure, just to ensure that it is 2 inches, and then that way you know everything is printed at the right size. Now two of your pieces will relate to your bag body, and these two pieces need to be cut out and then overlapped and stuck together with a little bit of tape to make it into one piece. And this piece is the one that you use as your pattern piece for your bag body out of the main fabric, and you follow the solid outside line for that one, and then the dotted line on the inside, that's the one that you use for your padding, so your wadding, your foam, whatever it is that you're using. Now if you want, you can print this off twice, so as you can cut two separate pieces, so you've got one dedicated to the main body and then one dedicated to the wadding. If you've not got the download, if you haven't bought the download and you bought the paper version, then all you need to do is take that bag pattern, photocopy it, and then you can use that one in the same way. So you'll have one cut to the inside edge, one cut to the outside edge when it comes to actually cutting out your fabric pieces. So let's move that to one side and look at what we've got when everything is cut out. Now your main bag pattern fabric, you just need to keep an eye on the direction of any patterns that you've got printed on there. Make sure your flowers are going up. You don't want those going the wrong way around. And then just keep a note of those corners. Now the corners are different from the top corner to the bottom corner. So you need to make sure that you have got those the right way around, because that will change the shape of your bag. What I tend to do is at this stage is I just either get a pin to pin at the top, just to remind me that that is the top edge. Or what you can do if you want to is just grab a pen, and on the wrong side of the fabric just put a little arrow or the letter T to signify top. And you won't actually see these because these are on the inside of your bag when you start putting it all together. So that just reminds you. You've also got your lining, so again you have got different size corners with those, so just keep an eye on those. Again, you can put a pin in place if you're wanting to. Now you'll have a long piece of fabric if you've got the kit, which is your strap. You may well have selvage edges. I've just cut these at the full width of the fabric bolt, and then you'll have a smaller piece which is the same width, and this is going to be for your little tabs, so they're going to go in the side of your bag to secure your D-rings, and then your adjustable handle is going to sit in there as well. So put those all to one side for a moment. Now you're also going to have fabric left over, don't throw this away, because this is going to be useful potentially a little bit later on. And when you do make the bag, following the instructions, it talks about the zip going right the way to the edge. Now this does mean that you've got quite a bit of bulk there with the zip, with the tabs in there, and it can make it a little bit tricky to get right. So I'm going to show you how to put a little piece of fabric on the end of your zips, just to make it a little bit easier for you to work that piece in. So that scrap is going to help you give a nice neat edge and make it a little bit easier for you to sew everything together. So don't throw that away. You'll find a piece of fabric in there as well, which you'll cut your pocket from, and you'll put your pattern piece on the fold and cut your pocket out, and that's going to sit horizontally across the body of your bag, and we'll work with that a little bit later on. You'll also, if you've gone for the kit, you'll have a long zip, which is going to be longer than you need, but we'll show you how to deal with that. And you'll have a smaller zip, which is going to be perfect for your pocket. You'll also have your D-rings. Now your D-rings, you'll have 2 of those, and you'll also have your buckle slider, which will allow you to adjust the strap on your bag as well. So everything that you need is there. And you'll also have your bag foam. Now I've already started cutting my bag foam out, and I've put a little pin at the top there so as I know which is the top end. And then I have put a little letter, well, I'm going to put a little letter T on the back there as well. And then I know that's the top edge of the piece. Now I don't know if you can see, I've put fusible webbing on the back of one of the pieces, because what I'm going to do is actually heat fuse it to the bag body. You can just about see the difference between the two there, and that kind of webbing is there to help. Now the webbing, I'll show you how to put it onto this piece here. So I'm just going to bring in my pressing mat to start with, and bring in the foam with the wrong side facing up, and I'm going to put the fusible webbing on the wrong side. Just get rid of that pin. So you're going to heat fuse this, so that means you're going to use your iron. So you've got like a webbing that will melt and actually stick to the wrong side of your bag foam. Try not to make your iron too hot, because you don't want to melt the bag foam in the process, and make sure you don't get it ironing onto your pressing mat as well. You might want to use something like a Teflon sheet or a protector to ensure that you don't iron the fusible onto any surface that you don't want it to iron onto. So hot to iron in the centre, no steam. Just hold it for a few moments and then move it to the outer parameters. Oh, my iron's not on. Okay, so while that is heating up, let's talk about needles. So your needles, because you're working with a weightier fabric, I always recommend that you use a denim needle. You've got lots of layers to go through, and the denim needle will help accommodate for that. So we have got denim needles available on the website if you're wanting to go for those. So I always suggest those if you're working with any bag fabric that's heavier than your quilting cotton. Right, the iron's hot now. Here we go. So pressing that in place. So press on the centre and then go to the outside edges, just making sure that you don't get the fusible anywhere where you don't want it to. Just take a few moments to do that. So the heat needs to go through and melt the adhesive that you've got on that fusible layer. So just take your time, don't be in too much of a hurry. Let the heat get right the way through. And if you do lift it off, try not to peel it back, because obviously if it's still hot, then it will automatically peel back straight away. It needs to cool down a little bit. So make sure that you're not pressing too hard and you haven't got the heat too high as well, because it can actually melt and make a little bit of a mess of your iron. So just be careful of that. So once you've done that and you're happy with it, we just pack that pressing mat away, and I'm just going to snip away any excess that you've got there. So the corners, we can snip those out and then just neaten up the outside edge. So let's get rid of that rubbish first of all, get that out of the way, keep everything tidy. So now I've got the backing on there, which I'm just going to scratch with a pin, You just run that across and it will cut through the paper. Don't press too hard, you don't want to tear the actual fabric underneath. And then just peel that backing away, and that will reveal the fusible that you've actually adhered to your bag foam. So you can see that's on there. Now obviously I've got it on both pieces. So the next thing is, let's get rid of those zips, don't need those for a moment. And I'm just going to bring in the bag fabric that we've got. Just make sure that we've got it the right way up again. So if you haven't put any markings on there, just make sure you have got it the right way around. And then the wrong side of the bag fabric needs to fuse with the wrong side of the foam, and that's the side that's got the fusible on there. So it's going to sit with a nice neat edge around the edge there. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap, so you've not got too much of a bulk there. And what I'm going to do is actually fuse those together. Now pin it on the outside, don't pin it in the middle, because you've got the heat that's going to apply to the centre, so straight away you'll be gluing your pin in place if you're not careful. I'm going to repeat that on the other piece again. Keep it central in the middle, make sure the flowers are going in the right direction, and make sure you're using the top alongside the top edge of your fabric, like so. So there you go, you can see it's now attached. So just pay attention to the edges there. You don't want those working their way loose. And you just work around the perimeter, taking your time to make sure that everything fuses together nicely. There we go, that looks good. Yep, secure. Just check those corners as you go. If you have got any areas that have lifted up a little bit, then just give it another little press. It's easy to miss areas, but it's best to check it at this stage because it just makes it a little bit easier when you come to do your seams later on. Do the same with your other piece. So once we've done those, just going to pop those to one side. We don't need those at the moment. We're going to do some work on this strap. So I'll still need my pressing mat, and you need your long strap piece and your shorter connector. So first thing I'm going to do is where you've got the selvage edge, I'm just going to trim those off. Just sharp pair of scissors, get rid of those. There we go. And then what you need to do is take the open edges or the raw edges of the outside and bring them together in the middle. So two of them together like so, hot iron, and then just work your way along the full length of the strap. So start pressing it, and we will fold it over again to finish off the strap later on. So just work your way along the edge, bringing them into the center, and then you can see there when we actually come to press it, it's going to be your strap with multiple thicknesses there. So just press that, keep those lines in the middle. It doesn't have to line up perfectly, but as close as you can, and then work your way along the full length. Now we do have a tool called your binding square, and this is brilliant for not only binding but also for making handles as well. So the way that this works is before you start folding and pressing right the way down the front full length, you just press a little bit in at the end, and then you feed it up through the inner slot on the binding square and then back down the outer slot, and this acts like a tensioner to allow you to drag it along the length of your binding that you're creating, or your strap, and it's like having an extra pair of hands folding it in as you go, and you just literally press the iron up against the acrylic there and press everything in place. So you can use the binding tool if you're wanting to. You can also use a binding tool when it comes to the next stage, which is folding the strap over in half, and you can use one of the narrower slots again, feed it up through the innermost slot and then back down the outer slot, and again that will act as a tensioning piece. It is easier when you're actually working on a solid surface, so the pressing mat that I've got here tends to move because it's only like a lightweight mat, so you need to have something a bit sturdier like an ironing board or a proper pressing board that you can anchor that end, and then you can see they just literally press it along. But because I've got it on the mat here, each time I pull the strap it's going to start pulling the mat. Let's give it another go and see if we can fix it. So press like so. Yeah, you can see it's pulling it up there, so there's not enough tension there, but it gives you an idea of how it works, and that binding square is available on the website if you're wanting to get hold of one of those. So there we go, all done, pressed along the full length. And I'm just going to put a few little quilt clips. You could put pins if you want, keeping the outside edges together along the full length. And this is because we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch it just inside the outside edges, both on the folded side and the open side, so just to make it nice and neat. So again, give it a little press to make sure it's all sitting nicely. Get those clips, get those pins, put it in place, and we'll stitch that all together in a few moments. There we go, so just work your way along. Now I'm going to do exactly the same with the shorter piece. So again, fold the edges in, give it a press, and then fold the edges in again and give it another little press. And again, get your clips involved with this one just to hold it along that edge. Give it a press, and then we're going to stitch both of these, top stitch them to keep those folded edges and those turned in edges in place. But your quilt clip's useful for this as well. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, top stitch down the edge there, both sides. So let's go and do that over on the sewing machine. So stitching about a ½ centimetre in from the outside edge and similarly from the other side. We're going to top stitch, so let's stitch through all of those layers. You can use a little magnetic guide if you're wanting to, or use the edge of your foot and nudge the needle across. It's whichever suits you best, whichever is your preference really. So we're going to stitch along the edge. Again, nice and neat, nice straight run there. Just go slowly to start with and then work your way along the full length. There we go, all stitched. So I'm going to take those back over to the work area. Now I'm going to take the shorter of the two pieces and just fold it in half, and then just get a sharp pair of scissors and cut through, because this is going to be the little tabs that attach the D-rings to the bag. So get your D-rings, just pass them through the loop, and then what we're going to do is stitch through the ends. So just put a little quilt clip in place just to hold them for now. Take them to the sewing machine and stitch through the ends. It just makes it a little bit easier when we get to the later stages of stitching those in place. Not going to need the handle, so I'm going to move the handle out of the way just for the time being. We'll come to that a little bit later on. Just pop that out of the way for now. But I'm just going to take these over to the sewing machine and stitch those ends, and then it'll just make it a little bit easier when we actually put them into the main bag later on. So stitched those ends, just separating them up, so nothing much to see there. So pop those with the strap, and we'll come back to those a little bit later on. So let's get back to the main body of the bag, and we're going to put the pocket in place. So you've got your piece that's going to be your pocket. That will fold in half to create your pocket a little bit later on, and that will sit on the inside of your main body fabric like so, and we're going to create a little slot to put the zip in place. So just get a ruler and a pen. Doesn't matter if it's heat erasable or not, because you're not going to see this. And what we can do is measure in 3 centimeters from the top edge, 3 centimeters in from the left edge as well, and put a little mark like so. And then we're going to do the same on the opposite edge as well. So again, 3 centimeters in from the outside edge and 3 centimeters down as well. And again, put your little marking in there. And then we're going to take the ruler and join those two dots together. Just put a little line connecting the two. And this is going to be the slot that we're going to be creating for our zip. About 1 centimetre down from that line, draw a parallel line, and then just do a couple of little lines just to connect them up to make a rectangle. And you can see they've got a little slot there that we're going to be creating. So then come back to your main body of your fabric. Again, make sure you've got the fabric going the right side, right way up. And we're going to position this. Now, if you have got a patterned fabric where you don't want the zip going through the motif, then you might want to put the zip on the other side. So just be mindful of that if you wanted to keep that pattern in shape. So we're going to place our pocket 6 centimeters down from the top edge, and then equal balance in from the outer edges. So just roughly nudge it across. It doesn't have to be exact, but not far off. So just position that up like so. And what we're actually going to be doing is stitching around the perimeter of that rectangle in a few moments. So you want to make sure that it is right before you start, because you're going to see this on the outside of your bag. So it's not tucked away on the inside. So yeah, make sure you are really happy with that. Then when you are, get your pins in place, pop them in. About 4 should do, just to stop it moving around from the main body. And again, be careful, because you have got that foam that's attached to the bag body. So don't go hurting yourself with those pins. So all we're going to do now is stitch around the perimeter of that rectangle. I think you can just about see it there. There you go. Stitch around that perimeter, and then yeah, I'll put the zip in place in a second. So here we are over at the sewing machine. So just get yourself comfortable and stitch. I start a little bit in from the corner. Just find it easier when you're kind of doing a full circuit, so to speak. So stitching down the one side, have your needle down as well, so as when you come to turn on the corner you don't skip any stitches, and then just work your way down and around. There we go. all stitched nice and neat, little rectangle there. So I'm going to take this over to the work area and get ready for the zip. So before we get the zip in place, we need to put a slot in where we've got the gap there. So just right in the middle there, we're going to take the pins out to start with, and then just get a nice sharp pair of scissors, because we're going to cut through the slot there. So you might have smaller scissors that you might need to get right into the corners, but we're going to start off with our big scissors, and you can cut between the two outside lines. So just be careful, especially if you're going to be folding it in half. Make sure that you don't accidentally nick the fabric, not meaning to, and cause a little hole. So we're going to cut there just to get started. There's a lot of fabric there, so open it up, get the tip of your scissors in, and then take it to the end. And if your scissors are sharp, you should be able to get right into the corners there, but don't cut the stitches. You don't want to cut the stitches. If your scissors aren't sharp right up to the tip, then you can bring your smaller scissors in, but what you might find is that you are going to need to cut several layers, so cut through the top, the middle, and then the bottom as well. So just be careful there. But if you've got a good pair of scissors, you should be able to get right into the corners there and snip those. So next thing to do is, there you go, you can see we've made our slot there, and what will happen is the zip will sit in there. But first of all, you need to pass your fabric through. So you literally take the bottom edge, post it through the slot that you've created, and pull it all through to the other side. Now it's a good idea to have your pocket the same colour fabric as your zip, because that's going to help you cover a multitude of sins. But you're going to bring that fabric through, pull it taut. Now it might be a little bit messy, a little bit puckered, but don't worry, you won't actually see any of this when we come to finish the pocket. So all I'm going to do is pull it back, keep it quite taut, get your pin in place there, and again work around the edge. We want it to sit as flat as we can get it, really, just where the slot is, because that's where we're going to be putting the zip in place in a few moments. So these are just going to be little pins just to hold the fabric back and out the way for the time being. Keep an eye where the fold line is, or the seam line should I say, where you've stitched the two together, and try and make sure that not too much of the lining fabric rolls back through. But if it's the same colour as your zip, then you potentially won't notice it that much. So there you go, you've got your slot there, as you can see, that we've created, and that's where we're going to be putting our zip in there. So your small zip is the one that you're going to use on your pocket. So we're going to bring that in, if I can find it. Where have you gone? There you go. And put it in. Now at this stage you need to decide which side you want the pulley on. Do you want to pull the pulley from your left to the right, or from the right to the left? And then you're going to pin that in place. So we'll come back and check this in a few moments, but just a few pins just to make sure that it's positioned initially before we actually stitch it. So just go around the edge, put those in place, and just make sure it looks nice and neat. And as I say, just make sure you've got the pulley going in the right direction, either left over to the right or right over to the left. It's entirely up to you, but you'll probably want to do the top of your bag in the same way, so yeah, just bear that in mind. So a few little pins around the edge. And then just flip it over, and just make sure that the pins from the front are actually attaching to the zip, and remove any ones that you were using just to stretch out the fabric. So here we go. Just pin those in place through all of the layers, and then when you're happy with that, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and stitch around the edge with a top stitch. So here we go. Now at this stage you might want to put a zipper foot in place, just so as you can get nice and close to where those stitches are. I've got a zipper foot, so I'm just going to clip that one off and pop my zipper foot in place. Just means you can get a little bit closer to the zip teeth, and it just gives you that more professional look. But on this occasion we're just going to go to the edge of the slot that you've created, but again it just means you can get right to the very edge. So again, bring your fabric up, and just be careful of those pins. I'm going to pull those pins out as we go, and just make sure everything is flat as you're working through. So stitch along the edge, taking the pins out, and if you've got your needle down, then you've got a nice neat corner when you get to it. and then off you go. There we go, so you can see our zip is in place and it works, which is a bonus. All we're going to do now is make the pocket. Now you've got that little tail of your zip left over, so you can snip that because the stitches that you've got in place now are going to stop the pulley coming through the edge there. I'm just going to take the bottom edge of the fabric up to the top there, and then just clip it around the edge or pin it around the edge, and we're going to stitch the 3 open sides of the pocket to create the bag, or the pocket bag should we say. So just clip it in place all the way around. I'm going to stitch these together in a few moments. Again, don't worry if it's not too neat, it doesn't matter, you're not going to see this, it's going to be on the inside of the bag. So there we go. Once you're happy with that, take it over to the machine. We just need to make sure that we are going to be stitching on the green fabric and not the backing, but I'll show you that when we get to the machine. So here we go, take it up to the machine, but what you need to do, let's get that zipper foot off to start with, put our regular foot back on. There we go. There we go. So when we're stitching the green fabric, which is your pocket, you just need to make sure that the foam, the bag foam, is out of the way. So because it's quite springy, there's a little bit of wrestling that's going on. So just going to stitch down the edge, just keep the bag foam out of the way, fold it underneath, and then just clip. But as I say, don't worry too much. If it's not perfection, then don't worry. What you do need to make sure though is that you don't have any breaks in the stitching at all, because if you have any breaks, then you're going to have gaps in your pocket and potentially things could fall through to between the bag outside fabric and the lining, and you don't want that to happen. So just take a few moments just to stitch down the 3 sides, keeping that bag foam out of the way, and then that will form your pocket. There we go, so you can see we've stitched. It's not perfect, but it doesn't matter, there's no gaps there. And just going to head back over to the work area. So there you go, you've got your outside of your bag, you've got your little pocket bag there, so when we open up the pocket we can put whatever goodies we like inside there and nothing is going to fall through. So that part done. Nice and easy. So we're going to turn our attention now to putting the zip in place at the top of the bag, and this is where the front of your bag and the back of your bag are going to join together where the zip edge is. Now it can be quite bulky where your zip is meeting up with the little tabs that hold your D-rings in place. So you might want to do the technique that I'm going to show you next, and this is utilising the scraps of fabric that I told you to save a little bit earlier on. So first thing that we're going to do is create an edge to your zip. So we're going to replace the edge or the end that you've got on your zip at the moment with some little pieces of fabric. So just going to cut a little rectangle of fabric like so, and then what we're going to do is right side of the fabric is going to go to the right side of the zip. So I'm going to open the zip up and the fabric is going to sit just inside. Now I always have to think about this, make sure I've got the right way around. So there we go. Yeah, it's just on the inside of the little stopper. Sometimes you've got like a little metal staple, or you might have a little kind of plastic crimp across to stop the pulley coming off your zip. Well, we're going to replace that by putting the fabric in place with a pin or a clip just to stop it moving around, and we'll stitch through that and secure that in place in just a few moments. So just weave a little pin through, keeping it as flat as you can and as level as you can, but just make sure you're keeping out of the way of that little metal clip or the little plastic crimp that might be there. So yeah, you don't want to stitch over that because you could end up breaking your needle. So I'm going to stitch across the zip there, yeah, we'll go and do that now. So take it nice and slowly when you're doing this, because you don't want to be doing it too quickly. You also need to make sure that pulley is out of the way when you stitch, because you don't want to go through anything too big and bulky. Now if you go slowly, your needle should pass through at a nice gentle rate. If you go too fast, then sometimes you can find that's when it's going to hit the tough areas rather than just pushing its way through. And that's when you get your breaks in your needle. So you're going to stitch across, stitch back again, and just secure it in place. There we go. So you can see, so that's giving a little neat edge. It's easier to see over the work areas, so let's head over in that direction. There we go. So you can see you've got a nice pretty end to your zip now, and when you fold that back, you can imagine that stitching into the bag, it's going to look nice and neat. Now we just need to take away that bulky bit of the zip there. So where you've got your little plastic staple or your metal staple, cut that away, and then obviously you've got your pretty fabric at the end like so. So there you go. It gives you a nice pretty edge, and also it's nice and easy to stitch into the side seam as well. So it's a nice little tip that you might want to take advantage of, maybe with another bag in the future. So we need to make this the right length to fit along that edge. So we've got a little bit of extra fabric on there, so we'll just snip that away, and it'll run across the top there. So let's just take that away just to start with, just so it's a little bit easier to see. Snip that away there. So the raw edge is going to sit with the raw edge on the left hand side, and you've got the length of the zip going across the top part of the bag. So just line that up, and then kind of get an idea of where you need the extra piece of fabric to sit on the other end of your zip. You don't want it to be roughly balanced with the one that you've already done, so kind of just eyeball it a little bit, give yourself an idea, maybe just fold the fabric so you've got a little bit of a line that you can follow, and just take a few moments just to get that just as you need it to be before you actually pin it and stitch it in place. So it's easier to check it 2 or 3 times and make sure that it is right before you just do it and then have to unpick it. It's just a bit of a pain to do that. So get it right, just kind of give it a little visual check, and then we're going to stitch that all together, and it will be a pretty end to the beginning and the end of our zip. So you can see I'm just going to trim away the excess of the zip like we did before, fold that back, and it's going to sit at that top edge, so I just need to trim off the extra bit that we've got there like so. There we go, get rid of that, and then it's going to sit nice and neatly in that gap, as you can see there. This stage you just decide which way you want that pulley to go. As I say, I often take guidance from which way you did the pulley on the pocket. So is it going to be right to left, left to right? Well, you can decide, that's up to you. And then what's going to happen is we're going to put the zip in place. Now you need to put the zip so as the right side of the zip is facing your main fabric and it's sandwiched with the lining fabric. So you get your lining fabric, make sure you've got it facing around the right way, lining up the corners as you go. So it's only one piece of your fabric that we need here, so let's just get rid of that separate one. There we go, get rid of that. So the zip is going to go right side down. Let's trim it so it's the same width as your zip as well there. There we go. Tidy it up just a little bit there. Perfect. So get rid of those. So right side of the zip facing the right side of your bag fabric. Just a second, get that neat. There we go. And then the lining is going to sandwich the zip. So you're going to line everything up along that outside edge. So you're going to have your main bag, you're going to have your zip, and then you're going to have your lining almost in like a zip sandwich. So just pin and or clip along that edge just to keep it in place. And then we're going to stitch that in place in just a few moments. There we go. Now when you are finished, just a good idea to always pin something first to make sure that when that becomes stitch line that it is sitting exactly as you want it to do, because it's easier to change it at this stage than it is once you've stitched it, because you'll have to unpick it. So all I'm going to do is take this over to the sewing machine and then just stitch along that edge there right the way across, just alongside where the teeth of the zip are. So I'm going to need my zipper foot, so let's swap the foot over again, clip the zipper foot in place, and that means I can get right up close next to the teeth of the zip, give it a very professional look. And what you can sometimes do is just rub your fingernail along the edge of where the zip is sitting, so as you can actually see. Keep an eye open as well for where the zip pull as well, the zip pull is, because you don't want to find your needle going into that, so just move that out of the way as you sew. Again, start off nice and slowly, just a few little movements of the needle before you start working your way along the edge, and obviously take your clips away, take your pins away as you get to them as well. And then just going to do that for the full length then. Obviously if you have moved the zip pull out of the way, when you do get to it, just stop and move it out of the way so it's not causing any issue, and you get a nice neat line of sewing there. So there we go, you can see where I've stitched those together along the edge of the zip. So I am going to top stitch it in a little while just to give it a nice neat finish, but you just fold it back. You can get your iron involved if you're wanting to, just give it a little press, but all I'm going to do is just take a few little pins, fold it back, pin it in place, and then I will stitch it in a little while. There we go, nice and neat. And as I say, that top stitch just gives it a professional finish. Now we need to work on the other side of the zip, so bring the other side of the bag in and just make sure again you've got it the right way round, and then it's all going to work together. So again, right sides together for the fabric and the zip, and then you've got your lining fabric as well, which is going to come together. So just make sure you've got everything in the right order and just pin the layers together, making sure that you've got the pins going through all three elements. So you've got your bag lining, you've got the zip, and you've got your bag outer. So the pin's going to go through all of those, making sure everything is securely attached to each other. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine like we did on the other side and stitch along the edge of the zipper teeth to give it a nice neat finish again. And then after that we will top stitch to give the professional finish that we like to see on a bag. So there we go, all done, pinned in place. Just make you check that you have got the pins and everything's lined up and you're happy with that. Take it over to the machine and we're going to stitch it together. So again, you've got your zipper foot in place so you can get really close to the teeth of the zip. And again, if you do want to run your finger down the edge of the zip teeth, you can follow that little line, or just get the edge of the foot to guide itself along, and then that way you're going to get that nice neat finish again. So again, we're going to run down the length of the bag, stitching that in place. So there we go, zip is in place now. So on the top edge, the front side, should we see, you can see it's all nice and neat. So again, the side that we've just stitched, I'm just going to pin that back because I'm going to top stitch along the edge before we go on to putting the bag together. So just a few pins, and then we'll take it over to the sewing machine and stitch either side of the zip to keep it in place. There we go, nice neat top stitch, giving it that professional look. So the zips are all working beautifully. We've got the pulleys both at the same end, and a nice neat finish to our zips. So far so good. So let's start giving this bag some shape by putting it together. So you're going to take the right sides of your bag and put them face together, and the right sides of your lining together like so as well. So it's going to sit flat like you can see here. And what we're going to do is going to stitch along the straight edges. So we're going to leave a gap at this point on the bag because we're going to need to be able to turn it through at a later stage. So on your lining is the easiest way for you to do it. So you're just going to stitch a little bit down, and I put a couple of clips there just to remind me that that's the side that I'm going to leave the gap. And then come back with your pins and your clips to kind of clip the other edges in place. Put a little marker there if you want to, but don't be too stingy with the gap that you're leaving because you're going to make it a little bit more tricky later on. Now at this stage, it's one of those do as I say, not do as I do situations. So before you start stitching, what you should really do is open up the zip. I've forgotten to do that at this stage, and you'll see that there is a workaround. You can get around it, it's just a little bit tricky. So before you actually pin these in place, just make sure that the zip is opened up to make it easy for you to turn the bag through at a later stage. So we're going to clip the edges together, like so. And then we're going to stitch along these 6 straight edges. We're going to ignore the corners for the time being, and the notches that you've got in the middle as well, where you've got that little kind of rectangular notch between the fronts and backs, fronts and lining, should I say. We're going to ignore that just for a little while, but we're going to pin it all together and then stitch in a moment. I'm just going to put a couple of pins there as reminders, but what I do tend to do is when I'm stitching the bags, this is the bit that I will stitch first, so stitch those smallest seams first to make sure that I've got the turning for when we come to turn the bag through in a little while. So from the edge down to your marker or your pin, and then leave the gap and jump down to the other end of it, and then stitch the last section there. So you're looking at leaving 1.5 inches, 2 inches at the ends, which should give you enough room to turn it through. And then stitch all the others as well. So you're going to have 6 sides that you're going to be stitching in total. So there we go. So I'm just going to snip the threads that you're going to have when you've jumped across, because it's almost like doing a bit of a chain piecing there. So just going to cut through those bits there. And we've got those gaps in the middle, which we're going to look at in a little while, but we're going to look at the corners to start with. The first thing, the 4 corners. So where you've got the corners, let's start with the bit where you've got your bag foam. You're going to put your fingers into where you've got the little hole there, and you can see it's almost like a little mouth. So the top seam and the side seam, we need to open those up and line them up, and you kind of need to squish the bag down because we're going to stitch across that straight edge. So you can press it if you're wanting to, but just across that edge there. So again, a clip, pins, whatever it is that you find the easiest when it actually comes to stitching. And you do the same on the other side. So pull it open, make it sit flat, open up that seam, or you can have one of the seams, your selvage edge going to the side, so they're kind of locked together. Whichever way, just make sure it's a nice flat finish. Again, clip in place, and we're going to stitch those in a few moments. Then you flip it round, and you can do the same with the little corners that you've got in the lining fabric. It's a bit tricky to see on the camera because of it being a dark fabric, but again, you're just going to get your fingers in there, you're going to get it to sit flat, and you're going to line up those seams. Now, this is the point when I realised that I hadn't opened up my zip. So at this point, I'm using the opening at the bottom to kind of wriggle the zip undone. So it can be done. So if you do forget to open up the zip, then don't worry, you can, but it's just a little bit tricky and a little bit of wrestling to get it right. So the easiest thing is if you do it in the first place before you start stitching those 6 straight pieces in place. But there you go, I've done it now. It's just a bit of a faff, but hey ho, these things happen. So the corners, yes, the corners are going to sit flat. Again, get your fingers in there, get them to sit flat, pin, clip them, open up the seam if you so choose, and just get a nice neat finish on those last 2 corners. There we go. So all 4 corners are pinned or clipped in place, and we're just going to stitch those over on the sewing machine. So just going straight across all 4 of those corners just to secure them in place. So you can see they're all stitched. You've still got your turning gap there, and the only holes you've got now are the side holes, which we're going to work on next. Now these are done in a similar sort of way, so it's kind of boxing off those corners, which is what we've just done. But what you need to do is, it's a bit fiddly because you've got, and it's a bit tricky to show you on the camera, but when you're working on yours, I'm sure you'll be able to see it yourself. So you've got 2 holes. You've got the holes where you've got your front of your bag, and that's where those little clips are going to sit in place. So you're going to open that up with your fingers, get your fingers in there. Again, line up the seam top and bottom, and where you've got that opening, it's almost like a figure of 8. You've got a hole in the front and you've got a hole in the lining, and you've got the zip connecting the 2 together, with the zip sitting quite flat. So work on them separately and then bring them together. So you can see there, that's the flat part for your bag front. So you're going to take your little clips, not your clips, your D-ring tabs, feed it through and just line up the raw edge to the raw edge of your fabric. open up the seam. Just make sure it's going to sit nice and neatly as you go. Okay, clip it in place, and then you can do exactly the same with the lining fabric. So again, get that to sit nice and flat. Again, lining the seams. Again, sorry for the dark fabric, but yeah, that's what you're going to get in your kit if you order your kit, so that's why I've used it. And then make sure it all lines up so it's sitting as flat as you can make it. So it'll be flat against the zip, and then because it's flat against the zip, you can get it to sit flat against the bag. So you can see they're flat there. Then you squish down the bag front, and then you'll clip all of them together. So there's a lot of fabric here, so you can understand why it was a good idea to put little fabric pieces on the end of the zip, because you'd have the zip caught up with that as well if you hadn't done that. So that's why it's going to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to clip it in place. Pins if you prefer, clips, whatever your choice is, and you're going to do exactly the same on the other side. And then we're going to stitch across, boxing off that corner as we did previously. So flip that round and we'll do the same on the other side. There we go. So we're just going to stitch across on both of those sides like we did previously. And as I said, there's going to be quite a lot of fabric there, so just take your time. Also, this is where your bag is going to be hanging from the tabs, so you might want to do a couple of rows of stitching. Just make sure that you can get it right the way under the foot there, and stitch through and do a couple of rows. Take your time again. Don't be in too much of a rush, because if you rush it, then you might stitch in the wrong place. And also, if you go at a slower pace, it's just a little bit easier for your needle to move in and out those multiple layers. Otherwise, you might end up breaking a needle, and we don't want that to happen. So stitch across, secure your threads, and do it a second time if you're wanting to. I would certainly suggest that you do that. There we go, all done. So let's go back to the work area. So we've stitched everything in place. It's all there now. Everything has been sewn, and we've got our turning hole, which we're our turning gap. And because the zip is now open, I can pull everything through. So you just turn it inside out, pass everything through that gap that you left. So that's why it's good idea to leave it as a big gap. And then that way you can fit everything through there. So just push out those bottom corners, and then where you've got your tabs at the top there, you can see that's going to sit all nice and neat. So yeah, starting to look like a bag. Fabulous. Now obviously in your lining, when you turned it through, you are going to have that gap, so all you need to do is fold in the edges, pin along that edge there, and what you can do is you can either use your sewing machine and stitch along that edge, or you can hand sew it, but put a few pins in there. And if you do want to hand sew it, then it's almost like a little whip stitch that you'll do just to secure that in place. But I'm not going to do that at this stage. I'll come back and do that later on, because you don't want to see me stitching that. What we're going to do some work on is next is the straps. So it's going to get those straps in place. So there you go, pin that, whip stitch it, sew it with your sewing machine, whichever suits you best, but let's just get it out of the way for the time being. There we go. Right, let's get those straps in place. So your strap. Now what I tend to do is I cut off the ends just a little bit, just so it's a nice neat edge, so the little tiniest amount just makes it a little bit easier. And then what you can do is you're going to pass the end of one of your straps, or the strap should I say, through one of your D-rings. So you're going to pass it through, and you decide, you might want to hold your bag against you just to get an idea of whether you want the zip on the outside of your body or close to your body. And you're going to loop it through. And then you're going to loop over the end, fold it over, and then put that against the main strap, and then pin through all of those layers or clip it in place, whichever suits you. So that's the one side done. That's the so there we go, got it pinned in place. So that's the one side done. Now the other side, at this stage, make sure you feed the strap through your fingers so you don't twist it at all. And then you're going to slide on your buckle slider, so it's going to go through and over the tensioning bar that you've got in the middle, and then it's going to feed through your D-ring like so. Now you need to loop it back through where the tensioning bar is, so it's a good idea to push a bit of that fabric through to give yourself a little bit of a leeway to actually get it through. So you're going to feed it through over the top of the tension bar and pull it through. So yeah, make sure you've got plenty of space there to do this. So feed it through there. Doesn't want to go through. There we go. Feed it through. And then it's going to feed underneath the tensioning bar and come back out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to loop, fold over the edge, and then just stitch it back on itself there. And then that means that you've got a sliding buckle with this one, and you can adjust it as and when you need to. Then all we're going to do is go back over to the sewing machine and stitch through where we've pinned those raw edges in place. And again, you might want to do that a couple of times just to make sure that they are nice and secure and that they don't come apart in the future. But you can see there, just loosen it up a little bit, give yourself plenty of room when you get over to the sewing machine to make sure that you can get the machine in. You can see there how it's kind of wrapped around that tensioning bar. So it's a bit tricky to see, but when you're actually doing yours, you'll see. So the loop there is going around the tensioning bar on your buckle there, and it means it will adjust. So over to the sewing machine now. Again, you've got multiple layers, so just take your time again. Don't go too speedy quick. Stitch through a couple of times to secure those in place. So there you go, all finished. Nice useful little bag, as you can see there, plenty of room in there for anything that you need to keep in your really useful crossbody bag. Now, of course, you can make these up, make them to sell, give them as gifts if you so choose, and I think you'll find that they are going to be very, very popular. And of course, we've got a couple of kits available, including the claret one that we've made up today. Oh, got a loose thread there, let's trim that off. You've also got your navy version of this one, and we've got a selection of fabrics on the website, so of course go and have a little look. But you can see it doesn't take up a huge amount of fabric, so I'm sure you'll be making lots of these as time goes on. Hope you enjoyed the video. By all means, make a comment. Do subscribe, because we are going to be updating more as time goes on. And don't forget, if you click on notification, then you'll get a notification of when we've next uploaded a video. So thank you for your time and enjoy your really useful crossbody bag.